Hey everybody, it's Yoli Medina, and I am covering the Brian Kohberger case. And for those of you who are not familiar with this case, this is a case of four students who were unalived brutally at a home near the University of Idaho. And Brian Kohberger is the one accused of committing this horrible crime. And he was a PhD student at the time, and the murders occurred on November 13th, 2022. And he was a PhD student of criminology at Washington State University. And Washington State University is about 10 minutes away from the University of Idaho and where the house was, where this brutal unaliving occurred. So there's been a lot of publicity on this regarding this case. And Dateline did an episode on this case where they said that they had exclusive evidence never seen before, that they received it from their trusted sources, and they aired it. And the other thing in this case is that the evidence allegedly is sealed. There is a non-dissemination order not to reveal evidence. However, that has become blurry. It has become blurry because there was an order by the judge who said that he didn't want everything sealed just as a matter of course, that he wanted good cause. So then we started seeing some evidence that was sealed, like the 911 call regarding the incident, which took place 8 hours after the unalivings. And so we started seeing more evidence. Now, that was a good thing, we thought, or I thought. And then certain things started getting sealed again. So I have no idea why certain things are sealed and why certain things are not. And I'm just going to give you an example. Prosecutorial misconduct was an issue in this case. Motions were brought and they were under seal, and the hearing was sealed. Okay, so why wasn't the affidavit of Cy Ray, the expert, who is a cell phone expert? He's also a police officer, expert police officer, knowledgeable and in cell phone technology, and created a lot of the software for the technology. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he's a tech person, very well known. So his declaration accused the prosecution of prosecutorial misconduct because Cy Ray believes that these AT&T timing advance records were available and they were not turned over to the defense. So in my opinion, that declaration or affidavit should have been sealed, because what happened is there was an open court where Ann Taylor, Brian Kohberger's attorney, was just chastised, and basically the judge called the expert a conspiracy theorist. So really, I don't know why that wasn't sealed, but it's become ridiculous as to what is sealed, what paperwork that is filed is sealed, and what hearings are open to the public and what hearings are not open to the public. So that's a big issue in this case, as far as I'm concerned. So what happened is Dateline presented evidence, or alleged evidence, that they received from Brian Kohberger's phone. And a lot of it was pictures of selfies of himself in a hoodie, pictures of women, I don't know, girls. And there was a selfie with him with a hoodie. And I don't know, without the music in the background and the narrator narrating what was being shown, that selfie probably wouldn't cause anybody to suspect anything. But the way the show was done was kind of like what I think the grand jury might have heard, because in the grand jury there was evidence that was presented, and the defense attorney isn't there to object or to protect the defendant's rights in terms of what evidence comes in. And it's designed that way. And that's how it's always been. So I'm curious as to what the grand jury heard, what evidence or what was on Dateline that the grand jury heard. Because, in my opinion, what was on Dateline was probably material that would be objectionable as relevance. I mean, you can't, I mean, a selfie of Brian Kohberger in a hoodie means nothing. Aside from them Dateline trying to make it look creepy. So the other thing in Dateline was they interviewed witnesses and not witnesses, but people who ran into Brian Kohberger. For example, he met someone at a pool party early on when he first arrived to Pullman, Washington in August, or I don't know when he arrived, but 2022, in the summer of 2022. And this woman or young lady, she gave him her phone number. And allegedly they talked about hiking. So Brian Kohberger texted her the next day and very polite message said, I know we talked about hiking. That's an activity that I enjoy. So let me know if you want to go hiking. Something to that effect. There was nothing wrong with it. She didn't respond and he never responded. He never texted her again. So that was one person that was interviewed. Then another guy was interviewed who was coming from hiking, and he saw Brian Kohberger going up the hill. And it was late. It was getting dark. And so somehow that's creepy. Or the way they made it out to seem was that he's creepy. Why is he going up at night hiking? Well, his defense attorney, Brian Kohberger's defense attorney, part of what she was saying, and what she says is not evidence, but in framing an alibi, which I don't think is going to fly at this point, but I don't know. She was saying, he was a night owl. He liked to drive around at night, and he liked to stargaze and something to that effect. And that he was driving around the night of the unalivings. Well, anyway, that person who talked about seeing Brian Kohberger going up the hiking trail in the evening, that just sort of corroborates what Ann Taylor was saying. So there's nothing, I mean, if you want to see something to it, you can, but I mean, he's an odd guy, Brian Kohberger. And apparently he's on the spectrum, autism spectrum. So the other thing that was shown on the Dateline episode was searches on his Google searches, I guess. He was searching for Ted Bundy, the serial killer. He was searching for various things like women who were passed out or things of that nature. And while that's something, he is a criminology student, a PhD in criminology. So, I mean, I'm not a PhD in criminology. I'm a true crime buff. And I search those things on my phone or my computer. God, I wouldn't want anybody to see what I'm looking at. So that's kind of okay. He did those searches. And I'm wondering how this evidence would ever come into a trial. It would have to be through an expert, I would imagine, who's going to say, I don't know how this evidence would come into a trial. And are they really going to call this woman who she gave her phone number to Brian Kohberger? Are they really going to call the guy that saw him going up in the evening to hike? I don't know. But there's also a book that's coming out by author Patterson that has exclusive information, evidence from reliable sources. And that book is set to come out like a couple of weeks before jury selection, which in my opinion is strategic. And I was on the Andrew Myers show, Law Offices of Andrew Myers, and that show is probably going to drop tomorrow. And we discussed all of that in that show. So I don't have the link yet, but you can watch that at the Andrew Myers show. But in terms of what else was discussed in Dateline was, or showed was a video of the suspect vehicle, that the suspect vehicle was taken off and almost hit somebody. So we have two people, well, maybe three, because we also have author Howard Blum, who's also received inside information. We've had Dateline get exclusive information of evidence from his phone, from his searches on the internet. And then we also we have Patterson. So this evidence is supposed to be sealed. So how does it get out? So who's deciding to give this information out to the media? And who's deciding when they give this information out to the media? That's a question that I'm interested in, because they're violating a gag order. Now, the judge has put out information that was previously sealed, but that's the judge. Here we have sources that are giving information, electronic information, meaning phone data and videos, to outside people. Now, I don't know how that information is being transmitted. Did they make a copy of his phone? How was that information provided to Dateline? How was this information provided to author Patterson? James Patterson, I think his name is. So, I mean, it just really causes one to wonder how safe this evidence really is, and is it susceptible to being altered? I mean, this is a question that I have. And, I also have questions as to what evidence was shown to the grand jury, and if any of this evidence that was allegedly leaked was shown to the grand jury, and for what purpose. And it doesn't make me feel comfortable that certain people are getting information on this case and the public is not. Because the public does have a right to know how people are prosecuted in the United States. These secret hearings are secret. And why are they secret? Well, they say that they want to protect Brian Kohberger's right to a fair trial. But how fair is it if certain things are kept secret to the public, yet divulged to the media? And only certain pieces of evidence, I'm sure they have more evidence, but only certain pieces of alleged evidence are being leaked to the media. Why? Well, and why is the book being released by James Patterson? Why is that book being released 2 weeks before jury selection in this case? Well, it seems they want to paint Brian Kohberger as guilty, and he may be. I have no idea. I don't know. And so if they're going to leak evidence like that, that's not fair. It's not fair to the public. It's not fair to the defendant. And if we want to be fair, then either seal everything or don't seal it. I mean, this half and half has really created problems. I mean, an attorney or anybody should be able to walk into a courtroom, like I've done before, while I'm waiting for a verdict, and walk into a courtroom and sit down and watch the proceedings. And I would sit and watch criminal trials. I would sit and watch preliminary hearings. I would watch various motions on criminal defendants' cases, all while waiting for certain things at the court. And anybody should be able to do that, but not in this case, not in Idaho. And it seems that people will get suspicious if there are these secret hearings, because prosecuting someone in secret, it doesn't ring well. There may be some good reasons why things are sealed, but if they are sealed and law enforcement is covered under that non-dissemination order, The prosecution is covered under that non-dissemination order, and former law enforcement should be covered under that non-dissemination order. Then why is it being disseminated? These people are violating a court order if they did leak it. And if they're violating a court order, what else did they violate? Because I've heard rumblings of, well, the police don't have to be objective. Well, I disagree. I think objectivity has to be one of the things an officer has when they're investigating a case, just like an attorney. You have to be objective. You have to look at both sides. You have to see what other suspects might have been involved in this, or was it one person? You got to look. You got to investigate, because I know, and we all have heard, that there was blood on the handrail in the house of an unknown male, and that blood was not tested. It was not put in CODIS. And the reason was because the lead detective, who had been a cop for, 2-3 years, he said that he believed that if he were to put that evidence or that blood into CODIS, it would erase the prior one that they had from the DNA sheath, or from the prior one that they had from the sheath, the button snap of the sheath, where they found skin cells of DNA. Well, that's not correct. So we already have someone who doesn't know and is not familiar with how these things work. So then you have, and the court was pretty clear that he believed law enforcement was the one who was leaking it, or the prosecution. So what else did they violate? If they're willing to violate a gag order, a non-dissemination order, and they have the shield of the media protects them, what else did they do? Now, we know that the FBI violated their policies in going into a database that was not sanctioned for them to go into. And they basically went into it, putting Brian Kohberger's DNA in that database to see if there was a match. And so that's how they got a match. So we have the FBI violating their policies with regard to the investigative genetic genealogy. We have somebody from the prosecution or the law enforcement, former law enforcement, and law enforcement. There were 3 agencies involved: Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, and the FBI. So we already know the FBI violated what they did with the IGG. So now we have some information that they may have violated the non-dissemination order. What else did they violate? Because already it just seems unfair. And I'm for law enforcement. What I'm not for is corruption. And I'm not saying that there was corruption in this case, because I don't know. But based on what I do know, it's starting to smell fishy. Not starting. This case has never sat well with me. But even more so now, I'm starting to feel uneasy about how this is going to proceed, because people have had access to this sealed evidence. And it's not just evidence like a knife sheath. It's not something tangible that you show somebody. This is electronic stuff that is downloaded or copied, or, I don't know how. It's subject to being altered. And when there's a breach in the chain of custody as to who got this evidence, did they sign it out? Was it emailed? How did they get it? And how, and who did it? And Dateline, of course, is going to say, we don't reveal our sources. And now it might delay the trial. So these things have consequences. And possibly a special prosecutor is going to be assigned to investigate the leak. Like that's just another added thing to this case that is not needed. In any event, those are my thoughts, and let me know what you think.